Start now.
This meeting is being recorded.
The
Good
floor is
morning.
yours.
Okay, so maybe I should start now? Oh, okay. All righty. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Behavioral Sciences Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting. Today is April 16, 2021. The time now is 9:09 a.m. This meeting occurred in various locations pursuant to the governor's Executive Order N2520 dated March 12, 2020. So at this time, let's see, I would like to have the moderator to explain about the public comment portion.
This is the moderator. During today's meeting, we will be utilizing the question and answer feature in WebEx for requests for public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment when the time arises, you will click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the Ask field, and submit that to all panelists. I will also be displaying these instructions at those times for your reference. We will also have the hand raise feature enacted for those who cannot locate or utilize the Q&A feature. We will be taking comments in the order that they are received. You will have a 2-minute limit, and I will be providing a 15-second reminder. And if you've made one public comment on an item and wish to make a second comment, I will hold you until everybody has made first round comments and then circle back to you, so please be patient. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you so much, moderator. At this time, I would like to have Christina Kitamura to help us establish a quorum.
Good morning. Deborah Brown.
Here.
Max Disposti.
Here.
Wendy Strack.
Here.
Christina Wong.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. So I would like to proceed to invite the board members and the staff to introduce themselves. So when I call your name, would you please introduce yourself? So I am Christina Wong. I'm an LCSW member, and I'm also the chair of this committee. The next person is Max.
Good morning, everyone. Max Disposti, public member and board chair of the BBS. Thank you.
Deborah.
My name is Deborah Brown, and I'm a public member.
Wendy.
Wendy Strack, and I'm a public member.
And I think we have the staff here. So let's start with Roseanne.
Hi, I'm Roseanne Helms. I'm the legislative manager for the board.
Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Sodergren. I'm the executive officer for the board.
Christy.
Hi, Christy Berger, regulatory analyst for the board.
Sabina.
Sabina Knight, legal counsel for the board.
And last but not least, Christina.
Hi, Christina Kitamura, administrative analyst for the board.
Thank you so much. So I don't think I missed any important, actually all our important stuff. So I think at this time, I would like to proceed to agenda number 3, and that is our consent calendar, February 5th, 2021, the committee meeting minutes. So board members, any discussion? No, I see everybody shake their head. And any public comments? So moderator, would you please open the Q&A?
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment on the February 5th, 2021 committee meeting minutes, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists.
Doesn't look like it, huh?
Seeing no requests, I'll close the panel.
All right, thank you so much, moderator. So at this point, since we have no other comments, so it looks like I need a motion. I will move.
I move that we accept the consent minutes.
I will second. So Deborah Deborah moved and Christina second. Any other comments? All right, see none, then I think we can vote. Christina, please.
Yes. Deborah Brown,
Aye, yes.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Christina. So and then I think we will go into our, our legislative discussions. So the first item will be regarding Assembly Bill 29, state bodies meetings. Roseanne, would you please educate us?
Okay, sounds good. Yes, so we're right in the middle of legislative season, so lots of bills are going to the legislature and committee hearings and are being amended frequently. So we'll go through some of those particular ones that seem particularly relevant to the board and its stakeholders today. So the first bill is AB 29. It has to do with state bodies and meetings, and the author is Assemblymember Cooper. And so this bill proposes a change to the Bagla Act, which is the act that governs board meetings for the state. And it would require state bodies to provide meeting writings or materials to the public on the same day that they are provided to the state body's members, or at least 72 hours before the meeting, whichever is earlier. So we saw a really similar bill to this last year that the board took a position on. Right now, we have the Bagla Open Meeting Act, as you know, and it requires a state body to post and provide a meeting notice to anybody who requests it at least 10 days in advance of a meeting. So this bill would basically prohibit a state body from distributing or discussing writings or materials or taking an action on an item to which they pertain at a meeting of the state body unless the requirements have been met that the materials are posted on the website and provided to any person that requests them on the same day as you the board members get them, or at 72 hours in advance, whichever is sooner. And the author is seeking to increase government transparency to make sure that everybody has a chance to review the meeting materials before the meeting. So as I alluded to earlier, this bill is very similar to a bill last year. It was AB 2028, and the board had initially taken an opposed unless amended position on that bill due to concerns that it would have made the board unable to consider certain up-to-date information before meetings, particularly with respect to legislation. And so AB 2028 was ultimately amended to address that concern, but that bill ended up, and the board then at that time switched the position to neutral, but that bill, AB 2028, ultimately ended up dying. So with this particular bill and the way that it's written, staff has a couple of different concerns about the effects that a bill would have on certain types of meeting materials. The one thing is closed session materials. Last year, AB 2028 didn't include closed session materials from its requirements. This bill does not address closed session materials, so staff believes that they should be excluded to make sure that there are no confusion that they're not subject to its requirements. And then with respect to legislative materials, staff has the same concern as last year, in that yes, it's great to have, we strive to get the meeting materials up as soon as possible, but sometimes, like today, you're going to see, and yesterday, we had a couple of bills amended. And if bills become amended a day or two before meeting within that 72-hour period, then the board is unable to discuss them. And it could mean that the board is unable to discuss a bill that has a very significant effect on its operations in the future. So what we do right now is we'll release meeting materials in advance, but if they update, we will post updated materials on the website as soon as I complete the new analysis, and we will send them out to the board members as well. So if we can do that, then we can't take a position on a bill that might be relevant. The current law does allow some provisions for special meetings. However, the threshold is really high. It requires a 2/3 vote for an emergency meeting. It requires national media to be contacted, and so the threshold is just really overly burdensome probably to do that. So staff recommends that the board request 2 amendments. The first amendment pertaining to excluding closed session materials, because of course those are not currently subject to public review. And then a second amendment stating that if writings materials on an agenda for a discussion are related to current legislation, the state body can satisfy that by posting the writing materials as soon as they become available. So that's AB 28.
Thank you very
29, sorry, AB 29. Too many numbers.
No, it's fine. Thank you so much, Roseanne. So this is a very similar bill, that we have discussed, for, quite a few times, for the previous legislation bills. So I really appreciate the fact that, the legislators want to increase the government's transparencies, but always it's about, how to implement it, because I think, the concern that Roseanne, you point out about the materials of the closed session and the timeliness, of the, and the timeliness and the relevancy, for the material distributed to, to the public, and yet, have, that's because of this bill, we're unable to really accomplish the real purpose of the meeting, so it's kind of like, it just defeat the, the whole purpose. So, I really like the, the suggested amendments. I think that is a really, really awesome, place to maybe, we can bring it up to, to talk to, the author's office, and see we can include. I would like to also invite the board members to give some comments. Any board members? Max?
Yes, thank you, Christina. Yeah, I share your sentiment. I totally agree with what you just said in regards to, I think this bill is really trying to address the issue of transparency, also public participation into the process. So I totally accept the sentiment and so forth. But how we do this is also very important, because in the past, policies that were similar to that were enacted to actually block bills that weren't, from particular positions and whatever. So it could be also an element that slows down the process of passing bills, because at the same time, at the last minute, anyone can put an amendment and now has to go to the next meeting and maybe next legislation. So it could be also a dangerous way to block bills in the process. So finding the balance, I think, is really good. I'm sure the intent Cooper, Assemblymember Cooper, was very positive. But at the same time, I like to hear, I like to see, to put some things in place that could prevent the use of this as an opportunity to just slow down the whole process, right? So there is always a striking balance between the two. So I definitely concord with Christina. I like the amendment, and that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. And Deborah?
I would like to tag on to both of you. I think the amendments, good job, Roseanne, to take into consideration what we had discussed. I guess I'm a little, what's the word? Bemused that the assembly members themselves, it almost handcuffs them as well, because they may have bills that they want to see progress, but if they're held up by different boards that they're looking for support, that they too would not get to move through the process as quickly. So it's not just the boards that we're looking at, it's the overall. And so I think it's interesting. I don't know what conversations he's had with his fellow assembly members about how this could stymie some of their progress, when I know it's essential when they're looking for different boards to come on board and support what they're trying to do. So I think this is kind of in the middle. I clearly understand what they're trying to do, but it's one of those things that has a ripple effect. It's not just the boards it's going to affect. It's going to affect, like Matt said, the entire process. So thank you. And yeah, I support those additions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. So Wendy, any comments?
I don't think I have anything to add other than what's been said. So I guess I'll make a motion to support staff's recommendation.
Yeah, well, we can also, so Wendy, hold on to the motion yet. We will open for the public comment, but I will come back to you. I won't let Max and Deborah steal your motion. So moderator, would you please open the Q&A?
My apologies, my mouse was going a little crazy and I couldn't get it to go where I wanted it to. This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists.
It doesn't look like we have any comments, huh?
Not seeing any comments. I'll close the panel.
Thank you very much. So I think, Wendy, now it's your turn.
Okay, I'll try again.
No problem.
I'd like to make a motion to support staff's recommendation on AB 29.
I'll second.
So Wendy moved and Max second. And, is there any other comments?
I have one.
All right, Roseanne.
So do you want to do a support? So basically we want to ask for the amendments. So there's a couple of different positions that we can take if we want to ask for amendments. One would be support if amended, which means we would support the bill. If it's amended, we would be neutral if it's not. The other one is oppose unless amended, which means if they do not amend the bill, we would oppose it, and then we would be neutral if they amended it. So that's a little bit of a stronger push. The oppose unless amended. The support is more of a friendly suggestion. So I think we need a little bit more discussion on which way we want to go.
Thanks for the reminder, because this is actually, we need to state a position. So, so my thought is that, just due to, what we talked about, because the bill itself to a certain extent will defeat, the function of the meeting. So I think in order to have more teeth, I would like to, my suggestion is oppose if amended.
Oppose unless amended?
Yes. Okay. So, now I don't know if that's consistent with the motion that Wendy moved.
Yeah,
Wendy
I think that makes sense. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christina.
Sorry, you would have to rescind your motion and restate.
Okay.
Then I'll rescind it and make a motion to oppose the bill unless it's amended with the amendments recommended by staff.
And Max, are you moving? Are you seconding?
Yes.
Okay. So, right. So Roseanne, are we clear, about the direction, and the recommendations for?
Yes, and what I can do is I can reach out to the author's office and let them know that we're recommending those two amendments, and that it'll go to the board on May 7th. And so they kind of have a heads up and a chance to do amendments if they would like.
Perfect. Sounds very good. So just to explain, right now we're just making a recommendation, for the full board meeting. And so, at the full board meeting in May, then we will actually formally, adopt a position. So, yeah, so there are many chances that, we will continue to see this bill.
Yep.
All righty. So I think, now I have a motion, I have a second. Moderator, I would like to open for the Q&A and see if there's any public comments.
And this is the moderator. We have again reopened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into that text field and submit that to all panelists.
All right. I don't see any
It
raised
is
hand.
all quiet.
Okay, very good. I think we out-talked the public for today, right? All right. I think we're ready to vote. Thank you so much, Christina. Please help us.
Okay. Deborah Brown?
Aye.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. So now we will move on to, the next bill, and that is regarding, that's the Senate Assembly Bill 107, and it's regarding licensure of veterans and military spouses.
Yes. So AB 107 is authored by Assemblymember Salas, and the bill would require all DCA boards to issue a temporary license to military spouses if they meet certain specified criteria. This requirement for a temporary license applies to a few DCA boards right now, notably the Board of Registered Nursing, the Medical Board, and the Vet Med Board. We have some other things in place that apply to this board right now that are designed to assist military applicants. This board is required to expedite the initial licensing process for an applicant, either honorably discharged from the U.S. military, or if they're a military spouse married to somebody or in a domestic partnership with somebody that is an active member of the U.S. military assigned in California. They have to, in order to be expedite, they have to hold a current license in another, the military spouse has to hold a current license in another state in the same profession. This board also has a streamlined license by credential process that we put into place about a year ago. It's not specific to military spouses, but it's for any licensee who has been licensed at the same level for at least 2 years in another state, and they meet certain other criteria. What that means for those out-of-state licensees who want to come here is they have to complete certain California-specific coursework in law and ethics, California cultures, and child abuse, and then they have to pass our board's law and ethics exam. So this bill, what it would do is it would require all boards under DCA to issue a temporary license if somebody is married to or in a domestic partnership or legal union with someone who's assigned to duty in the U.S. Armed Forces in the state. They have to hold a current active unrestricted license to practice in the same profession in another state or territory of the U.S. They have to submit an application to the board, which includes a signed affidavit that they meet all the requirements for a temporary license. And then they have to have not committed any act that would have constituted grounds for license denial or suspension or revocation under California law. They also have to provide fingerprints. The DCA board would then conduct a background check for that particular applicant, and the board would be required to issue a temporary license within 30 days of the results of the background check. The temporary license would need to be immediately terminated if it found that the person failed to meet any of the requirements in item number 1 above, or if they provided inaccurate information that would substantially affect their application. 12 months after the issuance of the temporary license or upon issuance of an expedited license or license by endorsement or denial, the temporary license would expire. And the bill does state that the temporary license program does not apply to a board with a process in place for this type of military applicant to receive expedited temporary authorization to practice for at least 1 year. So the author's intent, of course, is to assist these military spouses because they often have to move around a lot, and it can really affect their ability to become employed and make a living if they have to move to another state and obtain a state license. Board does not currently, we don't have a temporary license status. We don't have a licensure reciprocity with any other states either, but we do have that licensure by credential pathway that is available to all licensees with a license in another state, not just military spouses applicants. The board is also already required to expedite the process for military spouses. So a couple of things to note for consideration in the discussion. This is sort of a temporary bypass around the licensure process. A couple of things that might be considered important for public protection that it does not require. It doesn't state anything about the license requirements in the other state must be substantially equivalent to those in California. It doesn't say that the applicant has to pass the board required examinations or complete any California specific coursework. And those are kind of things that ensure that the applicant has the capacity or the competency to to practice in the unique mental health environment in California. Another potential concern, is that the temporary license is valid for 12 months or whenever the expedited license is issued or denied, whichever occurs first. It requires the licensee from the other state to attest to the fact that they think they meet the licensure requirements, but they might not actually know for sure. The board has a significant amount of licensure requirements, so it really takes an evaluator to determine what they meet, what they don't, what can be remediated, what can't. That's really a service that they get when they submit their application and have the evaluation. So a little bit of a concern from the staff end about continuity of care. If somebody is issued a temporary license and starts seeing clients, usually somebody who seeks mental health counseling, it's for a longer period of time, and so that it could cause that practitioner to suddenly have to stop treating their clients. In terms of the staffing and breeze impact, we're looking at about an average of about 18 of these individuals coming through a year. That's about how many people met the criteria for an expedited license over the past 5 years or so. Just want to talk a little bit about SB 679, which is the licensure by credential. That was really carefully considered by the License Portability Committee because it really was trying to weigh the best way to balance licensure across state lines with the ability to effectively treat consumers in the state's diverse environment. So it requires a license for at least the past 2 years, which this bill does not. It does not specifically state that the out-of-state license must be at the highest level for independent clinical practice, and that's especially important for like the professional clinical counselor license type. There's a lot of different levels of some of these different licensures in other states. Other states do it a little bit differently. So somebody might have a social work license or an Lpcc license, but it might not be the same level as the California license. And again, like I alluded to earlier, no California specific coursework prior to treating clients, no California law and ethics exam. So that's kind of the thoughts on that from a staff perspective. This would not apply to LEPs. LEPs don't have a license by credential option. So this bill would require a board to issue a temporary license to LEPs. There's only one other state that issues a LEP license, however, and that's Massachusetts. And their requirements are pretty similar to California, and I've listed the Massachusetts LEP requirements in the appendix if anybody wanted to review it. So in terms of recent legislation, last year we had AB 3045, and that would have required the board to basically issue a license if certain requirements were met and the person was a military spouse. The board had taken an oppose unless amended position on that particular bill because we had just passed the license by credential pathway. So with that, I will open it up to discussion.
Thanks, Roseanne. I see Max's hand up. I have one question for Roseanne, and then I see Max and then Deborah. So I have a question about associates, and it only applies for for those who hold the license. It doesn't apply to the associates that they have a temporary associate registration number.
That's correct. The way that I read the bill, they would have to have a license in the other states.
Okay, and that's fair. And I just want to, I'm just thinking about, that since I was, in the License Portability Committee, to help craft, the language for the license by credential legislation. And I think, there's a reason why we put, those requirements, in place. And partly it's not really about the hurdles, to not let license come to California to practice. A really big part is about the consumer protection, especially, that we have to, demonstrate to the consumers that our licensees, reached a certain level of the competency, have good understanding of the law and ethics, and also, the very California's, specific, populations. We have a lot of these populations that, really require attention, and maybe, some other more specific, treatment modality or, or intervention methods. So I think, the expediting, the issuance of temporary license is a really important idea to, support the military family, and yet I think for us, for particularly our board, that, just by passing those, requirement, it's a really big concern for me, especially we're not able, to accomplish, our, the purpose of the consumer protection. So that's my thought. So Max and then Deborah.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Likewise, I think for the sake of also the history of this bill, I totally agree. It's much better now because how it was presented to us, what is that, 3 years ago now? Anyway, some time ago was definitely really concerning in regards to the public protection. I think for the public, they are listening. When we say public protection, it's important to also go in the merit, and has to do with, for instance, that California implies protections for minorities and identities that other states don't even recognize. An unfortunate examples, there being few states right now that are making it illegal to take care of transgender youth when it comes to their healthcare needs, unless they're 18 years old. So imagine the consequences of having a granted license for someone coming from a state where that it's the law. And they might fall into malpractice here in California by just not obeying and serving properly how we're supposed to be serving our people. So that's just one small example. I'm sure there are many others. So I definitely embrace the changes. I have one question for Roseanne that maybe I missed it, so I apologize if I did, but I couldn't see on the bill. So what's happening after? Usually, these movements around, I know because I live in a military town here in Oceanside. So the movement around the country, within the country, usually it's 2, 3, 5 years, the length. I mean, it's never really 1 year. So what's happening when the temporary license expires after 12 months, right? Is that even the renewal is an expedite process, or they fall back into the normal license applications process and so forth? So I was missing that part, but maybe I didn't pay too much attention. So if you can go over that, thank you.
What would happen, yes, is the temporary license is issued, it's good for a year, and then the board, and at the same time, the evaluators would start evaluating the application. If the application looked good and they had met all the requirements, they would go ahead and grant a license. If there were any deficiencies, like let's say the person needed some California specific coursework, or they didn't qualify for the license by credential pathway, so maybe they had some experience hours deficiencies, then they would need to, they would have 1 year to make up those deficiencies. So that would start another 1 year clock, depending on what their deficiencies were. So it would be a little strange if somebody had some experience hours deficiencies and we had issued them a license and then they needed an associate registration to get the hours. So yeah, it is kind of an odd fit with our board, but it would basically start a clock for them to remediate, but they would still get the expedited licensure. If they didn't remediate it within the temporary license of 1 year, then the temporary license would expire after 1 year.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. So what that means is that if someone applying for the temporary license and the whole criteria are met in terms of qualifications and educations, then after that year, because we know the times of processing usually takes a while, right? By the time they apply so after that year, though, if they meet all the criteria, automatically they will qualify for the whole requirements of the licensure here in California, so they can still operate under the license, California license, correct? If they meet all the criteria. Okay.
Yes, yes. Then it
Okay.
would become permanent. It would basically, they would be issued, their license would become not a temporary license anymore. It would become a permanent license if they met
Right.
all the.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Roseanne. Thanks a lot. Very helpful. Thank you.
I think, Steve, you have a comment, right?
Yeah, just a real quick comment on the so the temporary license would be for a year, but mostly when we're seeing the military spouses come in, that's coming through the credentialing format. So really the only thing that would be holding them up is passing the law and ethics exam. Maybe some of the other criteria, but they could easily finish that within a year. It's the passing of the law and ethics exam that could take longer, but we can get them into an exam within 30 days and they can take it. So really, I think for the whole process, you're looking at maybe a 6-month process to get somebody, maybe on average a 6-month process to get licensed, so they wouldn't be able. And usually they already, when we're working with the military spouses, they know when they're going to be deployed to California. So the process really begins a few months before they even get here. So just a consideration on that. So.
And I will add on Steve's comment. The California specific coursework can all be taken as a CE online. So if they know ahead of time that they're going to be coming here, a couple months advance warning, it would be something that they could do from their current state if they wanted to get a jump start on that.
And that is such an important point because, I think that the deployment notice, will be received. Yeah, I mean, I received, and then they have time, probably, a short window of time, in order to receive. So one thing that, that if they, they meet the requirement, a lot of, the licensure by Credential. It's really about, taking the hardest is taking an exam. And I think the current requirement, that, in order to be eligible to take the exam, they still have to be licensed, right? Or they still have to be licensed, or they can just take the exam. I don't think they can just take the exam, right?
They would have to meet the requirements of the credential to be able to get into the exam. So.
Right. But then once they, meet the requirement, to take the exam, if they meet the requirement, then, we can already, there's an expedition process, and then they can actually, get the, get into the law and ethics exam. So, so it's actually, it can happen fairly fast already. Yeah. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for the information. And Deborah.
I have a quick question. Is this in regard to COVID-19?
No, it's more of a general effort to try to see what the state can do for military applicants. It's separate from COVID.
Thank you.
Okay. And Wendy, any comments?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. So at this time, moderator, I would like to, hear from the participants and see if there's any questions.
This is the moderator. I have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make any public comments, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment," and submit that to all panelists. And I'm not seeing any requests for comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Okay, thank you. So now, if there is no public comment, so I think it is important for us to, also provide the staff with a recommendation, so it looks like to me, what it feels like, considering existing, legislation in place, then this is more like an opposed bill. I mean, does it sound right? Roseanne, I don't know.
The position that I would suggest for this one would be an oppose unless amended to remove the bill from remove the board from the provisions, because for certain professions in California, it might make sense, but for therapists that see clients on a long-term basis, I would say that it doesn't make as much sense.
I like the suggestion of, having the provision to remove the board, to not applying this bill to our board. So I like that. So, I will make a motion to recommend the oppose unless amended, with the provision to remove BBS from this bill.
I'll second.
And Max second. So at this time, moderator, would you please open the Q&A and see if there's any public comments?
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into that text field and submit that to all panelists.
All right, seeing none.
I will close the panel.
Thank you. All righty, so I think we're ready to vote. Christina, please.
Yes. Deborah Brown,
Aye.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. So I think we will, I forgot to, to inform the public that, there are several bills that we will not be discussed and take it out of the agenda. So the next one is, so the Assembly Bill 270, the Core Behavioral Health Crisis Services System will be taken out. Oh, Roseanne.
I can just give you, if you'd like, a brief reason for each one. If
Yes.
that helps. Yes.
Yes,
So
that would
for
be
270, that bill is not moving forward. That is going to be, the author has joined the effort for AB 988, which we'll be discussing today, and is a similar effort.
okay. Awesome. So it's being combined or integrated. That's a better word. So in that sense, that we will move forward to discuss number 7, and that's the Assembly Bill 462 by author Carrillo, and it's in regarding the licensed professional clinical counselor X.
Yes. So AB 462 proposes removing 2 requirements from the Lpcc Licensing Act. It proposes removing the requirement that the Lpcc applicant gain at least 150 hours of clinical experience in a hospital or community mental health setting. And it also proposes removing the requirements that Lpccs need to complete specific education, supervised experience, and continuing education in order to treat couples and families. So existing law provides a specific definition of a community mental health setting, and then it requires the 150 hours of supervised experience toward licensure in order to become an Lpcc. And then it also, for Lpccs who wish to assess and treat couples and families, they have to complete certain additional training and coursework. They have to have either 6-semester or 9-quarter units of specifically focused coursework on theory and application of marriage and family therapy, or a named specialization in marriage and family therapy. They have to have at least 500 hours of supervised experience working directly with couples, families, and their children. And then every renewal cycle, so every other year, they need to complete at least 6 continuing education hours out of their required 36 hours specific to marriage and family therapy. And so Lpccs who want to supervise an associate marriage and family therapist, or somebody that's an Lpcc or APCC seeking to have that extra experience to treat couples and families, they need to meet the couples and families coursework if the Lpcc is going to supervise them. And then, so in the board's regulations, Lpccs who are going to treat couples and families or supervise somebody who treats couples and families, they need to apply to the board to have it verified that they meet the extra couples and families requirements. And then what the board does is it sends a letter out saying that, yes, they meet the requirements, and they need to provide that letter. The Lpcc needs to provide that letter to their couples and families clients, or any supervisee that treats couples and families prior to providing services or supervision. So this bill, like I said, would remove those two requirements. So the bill is sponsored by the California Association for Licensed Professional Clinical Counselors, or CALPIC. The sponsor notes that the requirement to complete the 150 hours in a community mental health setting or hospital is outside the standard of practice for postgraduate experience requirements for the license nationally. And then they note that the placement, because it's only 150 hours, there's a lot of adversity to hiring an employee for that short of a time. So the requirement can be a barrier to licensure. And they also note that in the 50 states, only California requires the additional couples and family coursework and experience in order to treat couples and families. Excuse me. And then to support their claims above that I just noted, CALPIC has compiled 2 research documents, and those are shown in Attachment A and Attachment B in your packet. So a little bit of history. The Lpcc licensure was granted with SB 788 in 2009, and the board started issuing Lpcc licenses, I believe it was in 2012. So it's been about 10 years, a little under 10 years, the Lpcc licensure has been in place. California was the last state to license Lpccs. And from what I can tell and looking back at the meeting minutes and the board's analysis of the bill, the requirement for the additional education and experience for Lpccs to treat couples and families and the 150-hour community mental health requirement was something that was added into the bill as part of the legislature's negotiation process with stakeholders at the very end. So I couldn't find a place where the board really analyzed and weighed in on those particular requirements. They were kind of not there for a time, and then they were sort of added in as part of the negotiation as the bill moves through the legislature. So staff has noted several challenges with the Lpcc license and these 2 particular requirements. We can, in talking with our Lpcc licensing unit, confirm that it does. The community mental health setting does cause confusion, and it can be a barrier to a license. There's a very specific definition of a community mental health setting, but it can be kind of vague. We get calls from APCC applicants who have found something that seems, a site that seems to fit the requirements, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily look like a community mental health setting or a hospital. So then they call the board and they're confused or unclear if their site is acceptable or not, because the law is kind of ambiguous. And then we also encounter callers who are having difficulty finding the community mental health setting 150 hours. It's become even more prevalent. The APCC licensing unit or evaluators note that during COVID, we've had several people calling and asking for exceptions because they've met everything, but everything else, all the other hours are gained, but nobody wants to hire them for 150 hours to work in a community mental health setting because of the training and the costs involved with bringing them on. And so they're kind of left without those hours. So that's one thing that we've noticed. In terms of the couples and family requirement in order to the additional education and experience to treat couples and families. So the board's experiences with that has been that we do get some feedback. Well, and we do have some issues because once an Lpcc has fulfilled that additional coursework, the 6 semester units or the specialization, and then the experience hours, it's very easy to verify that. So they send in their application, the board verifies it, we issue the letter. But once the letter is issued, that letter is issued in perpetuity. It's not like a special license or something, it's just noted on Breeze that they have it. So the board has no way to know whether the Lpcc has opts to continue treating couples and families and completes that CE every renewal cycle, except by audit. The board can audit them. However, the Lpcc is free to decide or not decide if they wish to continue treating couples and families. And so they might decide they don't want to treat couples and families anymore and not take the CE, which is perfectly acceptable as long as they stop treating couples and families. But it becomes kind of a tracking issue. And so that's from the board's perspective, we see some issues with that. In terms of issues for LPCCs, because LPCCs are not permitted to supervise AMFTs unless they meet additional requirements, we have heard some concerns and been part of some stakeholder groups voicing concern that can actually act as a disincentive to hire an LPCC, because they might not be able to supervise all license types, and then the employer needs to verify that they are able to treat couples and families, and then they've continued to meet that CE to treat couples and families so that they're supervising legally. Whereas it's much easier to just hire an LMFT or an LCSW that can treat couples and families no matter what, and it's not a question, and they don't have to do anything except for keep their license current. So we've heard some reluctance to hire LPCCs for that reason. It also raises some license portability issues we faced when we were running 679, which is the license by credential pathway. We had to build in the fact that all other states permit LPCCs to treat couples and families. And so when somebody's coming here, LPCCs who are qualified for that license by credential need to know they need to do certain things to treat couples and families. They can't just do it anymore. So it's not a problem if the LPCC applicant in that other state qualifies for the license by credential pathway. If they've been licensed 2 years in another state and meet our California specific requirements, they can come in, and we wrote in a provision that allows them to treat couples and families as long as they complete that 6 hours of couples and families CE every other year. However, if they come in from another state and they don't qualify for the license by credential pathway, that would be maybe they weren't licensed at least 2 years in that other state, or maybe they didn't have they have a degree that wasn't from an accredited or approved institution somehow, which would be rare, I would think, but that's a possibility. More likely, they would have only been licensed 1 year or something like that. Then they have to meet all the additional requirements to treat couples and families. So if the bill is successful, staff recommends requesting several other cleanup provisions in this bill. If the bill is going to move forward with these provisions, there's some other sections in the law that reference the couples and families requirements that would become obsolete if the core requirements the bill is deleting move forward. And I've listed them. It's 4980.03G about LPCC supervisors, 4999.112H talking about LPCC supervisors of pre-licensed LMFTs or people seeking experience to treat couples and families, 4999.120, which has the definition of a community mental health setting, wouldn't be needed anymore. And then 4999.60, that's for the out-of-state applicants under license by credential, that piece wouldn't be needed. So at this point, I'll open it up. I know that CalPIC is on the line and wants to talk because it's they're sponsoring the bill. So definitely I'm going to give them a chance to do that, and we'll go from there.
Very good. Thank you. So Roseanne, I so appreciate too, that the thorough analysis, about, the impact, of these two, actually, the impact, of those, the requirement of the practice in the public mental health setting, and also the supervision, the supervision couple, the training and the supervision of the couple and issues. So I think 10 years is a really long time, to really get the information, knowing that it has been nothing but problematic. So I think I can speak from, being employed in county agency that, yes, 150 hours is impossible. Oftentimes, like Roseanne said, just the training itself, to learn about the system, it's not productive. The 150 hours is nothing, that is basically just the training time, and the orientation, for the licensees or the registrant, to get used to the environment. And, and there's a problem, very likely that it's not going to involve a whole lot of the direct practice. And so I think that's certainly one. And I really feel that, that's, because of the requirement for the supervision, it might actually inadvertently, get, not, it creates a hurdle, and for the supervisors to be extra careful, to make sure that, they do meet that extra requirement, for when supervising the Lpcc, the APCC. And so I think sometimes, our legislation, can be very unfriendly, so it create inequity, even among the licensees. And so, and the supervisors, and I think that provision is definitely one of them. And I'm just thinking that being an LCSW member, that it's, it's there is no limitation, for LCSWs to treat, couples, and there is no limitations for MFT, to treat couples. Then why particularly LPCC? And I understand that was like the negotiation process, but I'm just thinking back, it's like, so what it really is the purpose? If it shows that nationally, California is the only one, it just seems to me that it's, it's understandable and is, unless there's some very other, whatever issue that we're not aware of, I think it's just very logical, to remove those, those provisions or those, those laws now. So that's my point. And, so before I, we opened the Q&A for CalPIC, to educate us more. Board members, let's go to you guys first. Any comments? Max?
No, I thank you, Christina, and I share your concern. I definitely reserve my my time for later. I would like to hear from the public and our sponsors as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Deborah.
I'd just like to make a comment, since been on this board a long time, and I remember way back when asking some questions about the differences between the different licensees way back in 2012 when I got on the board, and I was quickly schooled on what the differences were. But I think that what we have seen in that time is that the different licensing or licenses have come forward to us to try and make an effort. And I think this board has gone above and beyond to make sure that the requirements are the same and everything is equitable across the boards. And I know we've spent a lot of time trying to accomplish that. So I see that, as you just stated, I think that's just one more way to make it equitable across, just, adding one more thing. So that's what I got to say.
Thank you. All right, so shall we hear from CalPIC or any other public comments? Moderator, please.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Kenneth Edwards. Kenneth, your line is unmuted and you will have 2 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody's faces. I'm kind of sad I'm not on camera because I got all dressed up for you. But first, I wanted to thank the staff and the committee, our sibling professions, and many of our members who are actually on the phone today, and all of you here for allowing us to come before you with some substantive changes to how LPCCs show up here in California. Now, as Roseanne mentioned, LPCCs have been around in California for about 10 years, and we've worked in the same communities as our cohorts in the helping profession. We've stood alongside those, most vulnerable in California, and we've proven our worth, shown our education, and more importantly, contributed to the social discourse around mental health in the state. Now, we are embarking on AB 462 because the time is now that we're seen as equal to our counterparts, as many of the committee members have mentioned. Now, because of those extra endorsements, clinicians of color and those students and associates and full licensees without ample financial resources, this is just an additional barrier as it takes longer to get their training and for employment opportunities. There's also difficulty in finding work, as many sites will still, as Roseanne mentioned, still not hire LPCCs because our license is seen as less than. And then it's worth mentioning too that COVID-19 is not helping this issue. Plus the ongoing mental health crisis across the state. It's just really disheartening to know that there are people waiting for services and can't get them because of a lack of clinicians. So we see it as a workforce development issue. We see it as an issue unintentionally contributing to the mental health crisis across the state. And we see it as a parity issue. And this group has always been supportive of LPCCs, as Dean Porter spent many, many countless hours in this room. Well, the one in Sacramento. So we humbly ask for your continued support as we reach this next step in our journey as LPCCs. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kenneth. And we hear your comments. And yes, we do share the, our gratitude, for Dean, to spend many hours to work on the LPCC license. So, she's definitely, one that deserves a lot of credits. And
Our next comment comes from Jennifer Perez. Jennifer, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can.
I just kind of want to reiterate everything that's kind of been stated. So I'm an associate professional clinical counselor out of the LA area. I am part of CalPIC, and currently I'm out of practice. I'm situated there. I like it there, but if I have to transition to do the 150 community hours, I would kind of have to stop where I'm situated just to transition for that few amount of hours. And it is really cumbersome. And I do also feel like my graduate program, my training, where I work alongside tons of different licensed professionals that are non-LPCCs, but yet my scope of practice is limited just based upon this type of legislation. So I'm glad that you guys are reviewing it and supportive.
Thanks for the first-hand experience sharing with us.
Our next comment comes from Ben Caldwell. Ben, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Ben Caldwell, LMFT, and I wanted to provide some historical context here as well, because I remember all too well being in those rooms negotiating late at night on what would ultimately be the final language in the 2009 bill. There are some things that have changed since then and some things that haven't changed since then. Back at the time of those original negotiations, there was discussion, at least among some stakeholders, about the possibility of ultimately merging licenses. I was representing AAMFT California at the time, and AAMFT had a major concern about that possibility, wanted to make sure that we were protecting the distinctiveness of the MFT license. And that's part of the reason why we pushed for that 500-hour couple and family requirement. There is not that same kind of discussion, to my knowledge, among stakeholders today. I don't think there'd be any particular appetite toward such a major shift in the licensure structure. So that's a significant change in context. One thing that has not changed since then is that it is still true that counselors, to get licensed in California, don't need, or if you took this out, would not need any training or experience at all. In terms of having couples or families in their scope. The difference, Christina, to your question earlier, the difference between counselors and social workers in this regard is that for social workers, you have to have graduated from an accredited social work program, and the ability to work effectively with families is all over those social work accreditation requirements. So I know that Kenneth would make the meaningful argument that there is still a scope of competence issue here, and it's not like people would be all of a sudden, willy-nilly going into areas that they feel woefully unprepared for. But that is a meaningful difference in terms of the degree requirements for the two professions. I don't have a particular recommendation here. There was one.
15 seconds.
One other note, the 150-hour requirement, I believe, was a deal that Dean had made with psychiatrists. So, if that's good to be taken out, then okay, but I'm happy to answer any other questions about the history. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. That is a very helpful reminder, so, and it is a difference, accreditations wise, because, and how, that, social work interns, have to, well, yes, basically, in a nutshell, I think the education structure is difference between, the LPCC license course, I mean, the degree, versus a social worker. Yes, I agree with that. But thanks for providing that little historical perspective. I think that's really helpful. Moderator, maybe we can bring up our next participant.
I can do that. Our next comment comes from, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Ilhan Ali. Your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I really don't need the 2 minutes. I really support this bill. And thank you for Keith and Jennifer and Ben's comments. It's much appreciated. And this is my first meeting, so I also appreciate that as well, because you guys are doing a fabulous job. My only question is that people that are currently working toward the LPCC and their MFT license, like how would this bill affect that?
Roseanne?
I can answer that. So the bill would, if the bill was successful, it would move through the legislative process. The governor typically signs bills around the end of September. So that's when we would likely know for sure whether or not it was signed. From that point, the bill would become effective. It would be, if it was signed, it would be January 1st, 2022. So basically any application received on or after that point would qualify under the new law. So we can't make the law retroactive. So it would create a little bit of a transition period where the requirements were in place, but then on January 1st, the requirements went away. So it might cause people to want to hold on to their application for a month or so. There's not really a way around that. These kind of transitions with the law are always a little bit bumpy, because we can't just say, hey, we're just going to disregard the law because it's going away effective a certain date.
All right, and our next comment comes from Dr. Anthony Rivas. Doctor, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you very much. I would like to echo what Kenneth said. I'm really supportive of this bill as an educator, and I'd like a counterpoint to what Ben said is in our Masters of Science in Counseling, Masters of Arts in Counseling, you're going to have over 700 hours of practicum and internship. And with that, you're going to be in California, and I came from Colorado. So I'm licensed in another state and coming here. But here as an educator, as well as there, you're doing 700 hours practicum and internship, and you're working under a variety of supervisors in clinical settings. That's just the way the laws are written here for education to be able to apply for APCC. Of that, you're working with LCSW supervising you, psychologists supervising you, you're working with children, you're working with adolescents, you're working with couples, and you're working with families. So you are getting that practical application and experience in your internship. Of that 700 hours, 280 are direct contact. Thus, also within our curriculum for counseling for LPCCs, we are working with students and teaching them the practical application of all the theories and how to work with individuals. So they are getting that curriculum within their programs. And so I'm really supportive of this. And, on a personal note, I came from Colorado. My wife came from Colorado, and she's an LPCC or an LPC and LMFT in Colorado, and she applied for LPCC here. And yet she didn't get the couples endorsement or the family endorsement, even though she's an LMFT in Colorado. And so, some of those things just become barriers to the equity and access for the people of California. And it's onerous on our students. And I teach at a university where we are a Hispanic serving institution, primarily first gen. And those students, once they graduate, don't have the privilege to quit a full-time job to secure that 150 hours. And organizations do not, and Kenneth had spoke to this, organizations do not invest that much time or energy to somebody that is only going to be there for 150 hours. And so I think, I'm really in support of this, and I think it would really open up the access to quality care in California for more so than it already is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We can have the next speaker.
Our next comment comes from Ana Lydia Jimenez. Anna, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I am a graduate student at Cal State Northridge. I am in the PCC cohort, graduating this May, and I have benefited so much from CalPEC. And I also want to share that at my field side, I have already accrued 200 hours working with students K through 12 and their families. I am doing the work and I am in class with MFTs. Our curriculum, our assignments, and everything that I am gaining at my field side is really preparing me to graduate and go in the field. But it's incredibly challenging as I'm preparing to graduate to figure out, what am I going to do? What can I afford to do? And these barriers are something that I really want to echo, as Kenneth and Anthony shared, that this is something that's incredibly important for us students and everyone in our profession, associates and professional license. So I just want to echo my support and really highlight that as first generation students, we are facing so many challenges and debt, and this is something that we hope that can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker.
Next comment comes from GV Ayers. Your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate, this is GV Ayers. I represent CalPIC. I'm their lobbyist, and appreciate it very much what has been said already. Appreciate especially the Roseanne's thoughtful analysis. She's extremely valuable to this board and has been and will be into the future. So salute the work that she does there. And thank you so much, Chairwoman Wong, for your comments, your thoughtful comments regarding the amendments that Roseanne raised in the analysis. We agree with those amendments. And what we'll do is we'll work with the author to make those amendments to the bill as the bill moves forward. I have already talked with the author's office about this. The bill is up next Tuesday in Assembly Business and Professions Committee. We won't have them ready in time for that, but we will make them as the bill moves forward there on that. Those are very, very good, very insightful to do there on that. As you know, establishing the LPC license was a multi-year effort in California. And as has been pointed out, Dr. Caldwell pointed out, appreciate his comments there. In 2009, California became the 50th and final state to establish regulation and license for professional counselors. And in the latter stages of that legislation negotiation, the amendments that this bill is addressing, they were added the last bit of time to address concerns with the new license that was being authorized. And as Dr. Caldwell said, we are not making efforts to consolidate or merge all of the licenses into one. Obviously, that's not the plan here. But the plan here is, as Kenneth has pointed out, to have equity across the board. LPCCs have to do more in order to be considered equal. That's how it is now, as the law is. This brings us to better parity and equity. This bill would, and we are here for any questions that you might have. Don't want to belabor your time.
Thank you, JV. it's always wonderful to, to hear your comments and love to see you in person, but unfortunately we can't. So moderator, let's bring up the, our next person.
All right, our next comment comes from Nick Boyd. Nick, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Great, excellent. Thank you guys so much for your time. It's wonderful to be here this morning. So I'm coming today as a member of CalPIC, but also as a part-time educator and also practicing Lpcc and supervisor in the VA and in the community at large. And I think I get the privilege of speaking to both sides, as I said, in the educational and then on the ground floor. And these barriers that were highlighted by both Kenneth and Anthony, and then some of these personal examples provided by those APCCs that are experiencing, I can echo that, and that we get these types of questions both through the university, as well as through CalPIC, as well as directly personal emails. What can I do to get these hours, both 150 hours? Why am I having to go above and beyond to acquire these 500 hours when in my training program, I've received training in family systems, I've received training in how to work with diverse multicultural populations. And this is something that I think I just want to highlight once again, that that students and trainees that are coming from programs in California, the way that the law is written, it does require that they're exposed to counseling and psychotherapeutic theories and interventions. And some programs even go as far to separate that out and have a dedicated couples and family course. So they're really given the foundation both for the training theoretically, and then an application, as Anthony said, during their practicum and internship experiences, where I would be willing to bet anecdotally a number of those trainees are being exposed to family work and
15 seconds.
Couples work. So again, I just appreciate your time and absolutely support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have one more comment.
We do. This one comes from Kristen Wathen. I'm looking for you on our list. There you are. Kristen, your line is open and you'll have 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. And I do have kids in the background, so if you hear that, my apologies. My name is Kristen Wathen, and I'm a member of CalPIC and also a counselor educator at Palo Alto University, and also am currently applying from another state to get my Lpcc credentials in California, and have passed the law and ethics test and just waiting for the check to cash. So I just wanted to state that as practicum coordinator at my university, pretty much because they're, a student cannot do a private practice setting. One of the things that we require, and I believe is a requirement for the BBS, is that students are working in their internship and practicum in settings that are very, they're either they're community mental health agencies for the most part, some students do hospitals, but there's very few students who would not have met that 150 hours in their practicum and internship experiences. So that's one thing. Just it seems like they're being required to do those 150 hours again after they graduate, when they've already been in those settings and learned so much from those settings. Also, as a KCREP accredited institution, one of the requirements under human growth and development is that we cover standards that are focused in family, human growth and development for family systems over the lifespan. And so we do cover those things in our curriculum. And also our students are, or students in many programs are working with children without any type of barriers. When you work with children, inevitably you're working with families and most often couples, different type of work, but they do get that exposure. And so I really am enjoying hearing this conversation as someone who's coming from another state where I was completely shocked and surprised when I
15
moved here
seconds.
and found out there were requirements, and love hearing the collaboration between the different licensures and hearing the history and context. And I do support this, and I'm thankful to hear this so much support for it from lots of individuals. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And moderator, I think this is all, right?
Yes, that is all of the requests I see at this time, so I will close the panel.
Thank you so much. So we're back to us, board members, and I think, we hear from the public comments, they do address a lot of the competency issues, the equity issues, the barriers, and, and also, the history, why it's come to, this, legislation right now, the laws right now for LPCC. And so, so I think we really have to consider, that, whether the comments are valid, whether we would like to, support the bill. This is not our bill. We support this bill, to move forward, to help, the LPCC, reduce their barrier, in terms of licensing. So I think the competency is important, for us because, our job again, consumer protection. So, whether the materials provided and the comments provided are, convincing, our board, to make a recommendation, to support this bill. So being said, any other comments from the board members? Since you all want to hear from the stakeholders, now we have them.
Christina,
yes.
Oh, all right.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming to share their thoughts and input with us today. It was really helpful for me as a public member to hear from LPCC members and practitioners, and so your input was really valuable. So I think it really helped me better understand the approach and the bill, and I just wanted to thank everybody for coming.
Perfect. Thank you. Max?
Yeah, likewise, actually. I was aware of the history and the concerns that developed throughout the years. So it's so nice to see where we came about. And thanks also to Roseanne for always being at the right place at the right time and making sure that the needs of our publics are met, but also our licensee as well. So, of course, this is not our bill. I support it. And I will invite our advocates here today and in representation to also come to our public board meeting next, so the rest of the board can hear you and share likewise, the need of the support of this bill. So I'll make a motion in support. I'll move a motion, and unless there is any particular language, Roseanne, that we need to apply for the support on it.
It sounds like the sponsor is committed to making the cleanup amendments, so I don't think there's any need for our support if amended at this time. And hopefully the cleanup amendments will be in place by the May 7th board meeting. So we'll see and go from there.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I will second. So, so Max moved and Christina second. And any other comments from the board member? No. Any comments from the public?
This is the moderator. We have again opened the Q&A panel. If you have any last comments regarding this bill, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type, I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to all panelists.
Very good. I don't see any.
I don't either. Oh, well, actually, we just had one pop in.
Okay.
This one's from GV Ayers.
Yes.
GV, your line is open. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Won't take 2 minutes. Thank you so much to the committee. Yes, on behalf of CalPIC sponsors, we are committing to making these amendments, and we'll do our best to get them in before the May 7th board meeting. I will say that we were working on a statement from Dean Porter for the committee, but hopefully we're not able to complete that. So hopefully we will she'll be able to have that for the May board meeting from her historical perspective. Thank you so much.
Perfect. That sounds really good. We always love, Dean's comments, even though she may or may not be here in person, but love to hear from her comments also. Thank you so much. And I think in that sense, if there's no more comments, moderator, then
I will close the panel.
Thank you so much. Then I think we're ready to vote. Christina, please.
Deborah Brown,
Aye.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. This is such a wonderful discussion. So, and again, I want to just remind everyone that, this is a recommendation. At the full board meeting, we will formally, make a, have the board approve, whether we support the bill or not. So at this time, I'd like to take a break, a very needed morning break. So let's take a very quick 5 minutes break. So the time now is almost 10:34. Okay, let's come back at 10:45. 6 minutes break. Thank you. Okay, so are we all back? I think we're still missing Deborah.
Text that Steve was having trouble getting back in, so it might take him a minute.
Yeah. So moderator, should we, pause the meeting or, let's see, I think Deborah is still. Yeah, we need Deborah.
Yeah, Deborah and Wendy there's Wendy.
Wendy's here.
Yeah, I still don't see Steve.
No, Steve dropped out. I'm watching for him to come back in. He's coming on his way back in now. I can see him popping in.
And then Deborah is, let's see. Where is Deborah? Oh, so Deborah's video is off. Okay. Yes. And then Steve, do we need Steve?
Steve is in our attendee panel. I can see that he's working on getting back in. He still doesn't have an audio connection.
Yeah.
There's Deborah.
So Deborah's here. Now Wendy Wendy's.
Oh, I see Steve.
Sorry, I was just getting something.
Okay.
Yes, Steve just doesn't have an audio connection at the moment.
Okay. So, should we start anyway? Because I think, he can probably fix it, during the time when Roseanne is presenting the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So, welcome back. The time now is 10:47 a.m. and we are back with the Board of Behavioral Sciences Policy and Advocacy Committee. Roseanne, I think we will be skipping item number 8, and that's the Senate Assembly Bill 562.
Yes.
Yeah, would you like to give a little explanation also?
That bill has to do with mental health services for frontline COVID providers. The bill was amended recently. It does not include our license types, although it does require a DCA to implement a program. There's a lot of details that need to be worked out still with this bill, so I think it's going to be evolving. So I'm currently watching it closely.
Nice. And we might see it back, in the board meeting then.
Possibly, yes.
Yes, good.
Depending on what happens with it.
That's right. That's right. All right. Then we can move to the next item number 9, and that is the Assembly Bill 646 by Arthur Lowe, and it's about the Department of Consumer Affairs sports expunge convictions.
Yes.
Roseanne?
So yes, this bill will require DCA boards upon a licensee or former licensee provision of a certified copy of expungement. The board would need to update the website with notification of the expungement order if the person is relicensed or reapplies for licensure or it would require the board to remove the posting of revocation and previously posted arrests, convictions, and charges from the website if the person's web license was revoked, they're no longer licensed, and they don't reapply. So existing law has specific statutes that apply to the various boards under DCA, including this board, that we are required to provide information on the internet regarding the status of every license issued. It must be provided in accordance with the California Public Record Act and the Information Practices Act. That public information is required by law to include information on suspensions and revocations of licenses and other related enforcement actions. It can't include certain personal information like home phone numbers, social security numbers, things like that. That's prohibited. Currently, the medical board has a requirement similar to what this bill is proposing, that if there's an expungement or order, then within 6 months they have to remove it from or post the notice of the expungement order on their board site, on their board website. So medical board has a similar requirement to what this bill is proposing. And I should say before I move forward, this bill has been amended a couple of times this week. So the version that we're considering today is the amended April 14th, 2021 version. So that's the one that I'm talking about and we'll be considering a position on. So hopefully you have your packet updated with that particular bill. Under this bill, the DCA board must update the website, like I said, if the person has an expungement order that they provide, and if the person reapplies for license or has been relicensed, we have to post the notice of expungement and its date. If the person's not currently licensed and doesn't reapply, we have to remove the initial posting that the license was revoked and information regarding their arrest, charges, and convictions. And all of this needs to be done within 90 days of us receiving the expungement order. And the bill authorizes the DCA board to charge a reasonable fee to cover the costs associated with the website update. So that would probably require regulations to establish what that fee was that the board was going to charge. So the author, they state that what they're trying to do is reduce employment barriers for people with previous criminal records who have been rehabilitated and whose conviction has been dismissed or expunged, in order to continue on and seek meaningful employment. I had talked to the medical board because they have a similar requirement to this, and they indicate that one staff person handles this workload for their board. It's a small portion of their duties. Therefore, we believe the fiscal impact would be absorbable and minor. Medical board has approximately 150,000 licensed physicians and surgeons, which is a little bit bigger than our board. We have about between 120 and 125,000 licensees and registrants. So somewhat similar scale there. In terms of previous legislation, we saw a bill that was similar to this last year. The board had taken a support if amended position on AB 1616 and expressed concerns about the requirement to remove the revoked posting for an individual who is not currently licensed. And so the reason that we took that position on AB 1616, which is very similar to this bill, we had noted 3 concerns. The first concern the board noted was exempt settings. An individual who's revoked might choose to continue practicing in an exempt setting. And so the board felt that if a revoked license posting is removed from the website, those settings would have no way of knowing that one of their unlicensed practitioners had a revoked license. Another concern that the board expressed was practice in another state. An individual whose license is revoked might decide to move to another state and obtain a license there. So if the revoked posting was removed, the other state would be unaware when making their decision about whether or not to issue a license. And then finally, there were concerns about an individual going into similar practice. So when the board revokes a license, the former licensee sometimes chooses to practice in a field related to the board's professions, but not requiring a license. So what we're referring to when we talk about that is life coaching. Some of our revoked licensees go into life coaching that does not require a license, that's not regulated. The fact that a license is revoked and the conviction was expunged might be important depending on the circumstances for the consumer to know in order for them to make an informed decision on their particular situation. So the board had requested an amendment to Business and Professions Code section 493.5A2, which this bill is also amending. Instead of requiring the deletion of the license revocation from the website, if there is an expungement and no reapplication, the board thought that public protection would be better served if the notification of the expungement order was simply required to be posted with its corresponding date. That way, a person could look up the former licensee, they would have a chance to show rehabilitation efforts, but at the same time, a consumer could take the relevant information that was there and make an informed decision that was best for them. So that's what we have on this bill, and I'll open it up to discussion now.
Thank you, Roseanne. So, there's so many bills that's just very, very similar. And, so my question, what I'm thinking is that, so previously, when we were talking about AB 1616, the concern, so, now is that particular concern about the posting, also has been included in this version? So I'm just trying to, yeah.
So in this version is basically identical, maybe not word for word, but pretty close. So it says, let me see. It would if the person was revoked and doesn't reapply, it would require the posting to be removed completely. So it's the same as the one last year where you wouldn't see it anymore in that situation. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I think that was a big concern that, that about, and that's tied to the life coaching part, because, when it's completely removed and then there is not like a history, that you can see that particular licensee, some of the record, I think, posting the record that it has been expunged, and that's great. But, if it's completely removing the record, and I think it's like just basically hurt that the intent of consumer protection. So that's exactly my point. So thanks, Roseanne. So I want to open to the board members. Any comments? Okay, so let's hear from the public.
Oh, hold on, Christina. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead, Max.
It was taking me a while to unmute. It's a question for Roseanne on the part of the bill where it's addressing the issue of the cost of the operation. Let's say the bill goes through, and then there is actually the actual act of expunging, so we'll have a cost. Is that what I wasn't clear? Is that a cost that's passed to the actual former licensee, or how is it addressed? So it was just a budget matter, that's why it was there. I just wanted some clarification.
You're referring to the $50 fee, correct, Max?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So previously, there had been a $50 fee. So the expungement and everything that the applicant does in the court system to rehabilitate and have it removed from their record is separate from the board. So that would all be resolved. The cost of that, if there's costs to it, they would deal with that in the court system. When it comes to here, I'm not sure. I don't see a fiscal impact in talking with medical board on this for us, and I see Steve is shaking his head too. So I don't think that. I think that it's allowing the bill to charge a fee if they want to, if they feel like they need to maybe hire a new employee or something, to complete this workload. I don't see, I see us being able to absorb it, unless something really unforeseen happened where it was really taking a lot of time or we got an unexpected rush of these. I don't see the need to charge a fee to do that on our side.
No. I wasn't proposing that. It was just a clarification. Actually, the opposite. I was more concerned in case there was a consideration. Sometimes it's not just the fee, it's the fact that a lot of people are not aware of the process and they don't know how to go by, and they let it go, and then it stays there. It creates that inequity where some people are able to have access, and it's not just the $50 fee, but actually the process of removing it from the website versus others that don't even know how. So I was just concerned about that, not because I wanted the opposite to happen, actually. So Thank you, Roseanne, for the clarification.
Sure.
So So any other board members who want to make comments? Okay, so a moderator, would you please open the Q&A panel? Thank you.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Rebecca Gonzalez. Rebecca, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask a question. This is a question, Roseanne, about the California medical or what that board. Do they have a provision similar to the one where you actually remove the information completely if they don't reapply for a license?
They do not right now. Theirs doesn't go that far. And this bill is actually written for them. It says if any provision in this section conflicts with 2027 shall prevail. So 2027 is the medical board's code. So basically, they get to keep doing what they're doing. So that piece where it's removed does not apply to them.
Okay, so NASW, we don't have a official position on this bill yet, but we are generally supportive of things that, you know, help people who had prior convictions and who are rehabilitated to go on with their lives and be able to get employment and contribute to society. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Any other comments?
Not seeing any other requests at this time.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, moderator. So I think we can close the panel, right? Sorry, I should let you actually say your words.
It's okay.
All right, thank you. So let me come back to the board members then. Now, so the, since the bill has been, it's pretty much identical. And we did talk about the possibility, the previous, AB 1616, we did ask, to add that, to delete the license revocation from website if there's an expungement and the person does not reapply. Okay, so that, no, I'm reading it wrong. So it will be better served by requiring a notification of the expungement order and corresponding dates be posted. I think that was the previous, AB 1616 position. So, since the bill, died and I think for your consideration, whether this particular provision, would be applicable, to this particular bill. Roseanne, do you have a question? It looks like you have a question or not clear.
No question.
Okay, thank you. So, what do you think? Would that be, sufficient? Particularly, that considering the possibility of, licensees, who does not apply and yet, working, to the similar position, or the profession like life coach, which doesn't, require a license, or some other, other whatever the new terms, So I think for us, that's it would be really about, the consumer protection and also, how can we provide the information, for the public to, it's a more that, provide information for their informed decision of choosing a therapist. So any comments?
Christina?
Yeah.
Max here. So I'm just, because I remember the conversation we had a few times ago in regards to this, but at the same time, and as a public member as well, definitely the consumer protection is, and as a board, is dear to our, priorities. At the same time, though, there is also an element of disparities. I mean, the way it is creating a problem. And so I kind of like put it in a way of balancing what are the risks for the consumer in relations to a possibility that a scenario like that might happen. It does happen because we came across that. But then the majority of cases where when something has been expunged and is still appearing on the website, it's affecting the outcome and the livelihood of the majority of the people that actually went through, proceedings. So I'm more, even though I don't like it completely the way it is, but I'm more propense to actually support it, because it's actually addressing an issue of disparity that's the way it is not really effective. Since we don't have anything else at the moment, I will prefer to work with the legislators and maybe have a conversation through Roseanne about the possibility to look into it a little bit more and the possible disparities it might create, but at the same time, it's addressing an issue that's real. And so I'm more moving towards supporting the idea of having it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that AB 1616, we do have a support if amended position.
Right.
So, so that's very consistent with exactly what we talked about. We support it,
Right.
and yes, we would like to work with the author's office, to add that, add that provision, that's, what we talk about requiring the notification of the expungement order and the corresponding dates be posted. Yeah.
Right.
So, Wendy or Deborah, just make sure that don't want to miss out you both. Okay. All right. So let's push it forward then. I would make a motion to recommend a support if amended position, and direct staff to work with the author's office to how do you call it, just to basically, to provide that provision, that we talked about, in the amendments, there you go, provide that amendments, maybe, make that modification to the bill. I need a second. Deborah, second. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, second. Thank you, Deborah. So Roseanne, are we clear about the motion?
Yes, it would be support if amended, and then work with the author's office to discuss the possible amendment to 4935A2 to instead of requiring deletion, have the notice of expungement.
Yes, perfect. Exactly. Thank you. So, a moderator, I would like to open for the public and see if there's any other comments.
This is the moderator. We have again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make any last comments on this bill, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists.
All right. Doesn't look like we have any raised hand question.
No raised hands and no questions. I will close the panel.
Thank you very much. So Christina, I think we're ready to vote. Thank you.
Deborah Brown? Deborah Brown?
Aye.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Christina Wong?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And then I think we can move forward to number 10, and that is the Assembly Bill 723 by Arthur Lowe, and it's regarding the marriage and family therapist scope of practice. Roseanne, take it away.
Okay, so this bill, we actually don't have an analysis today. We have the board in its March meeting took a support position on this bill, and we left it on the agenda as a placeholder in case it was amended within the 10 days and we needed to be able to talk about it. So the bill has not been amended. So we are going to skip over this item today as the support position stands on the current version.
That is wonderful. That's why, we have no information on this bill.
Right.
Like, where's number 10?
Right, exactly. Nope, there's no changes happened, so no need to update the position.
Yes. But it's putting on the agenda so that we can keep track of it.
Yeah. Otherwise, if it got amended, then we can't talk about it. So
Absolutely.
That's why we do that.
Absolutely. So this is good news. So then we can quickly move forward to Assembly Bill 885 by Arthur Kirk, and it's regarding Bagla Open Meeting Act teleconferencing?
Yes, so this bill is seeking to modernize the Bagla-Keene Open Meeting Act requirements for state bodies conducting a meeting via teleconference. As we're all aware, we have definitely had to adapt to the COVID-19 situation and teleconferencing. And so this bill is trying to update the Bagla-Keene Open Meeting Act, which governs our board's open meetings in order to keep up with the fast changing times. So under the Bagla-Keene Act, all deliberations of state agencies must be conducted openly. It has to be open to the public and persons permitted to attend, with certain exceptions. There can be closed session meetings. The Bagla-Keene currently permits a state body to hold open or closed meetings by teleconference if it complies with certain requirements. For meetings conducted by teleconference, the state body has to identify each specific teleconference location in the notice and the agenda of the meeting, and make each teleconference location accessible to the public. Now, I'm talking during normal times. Right now, there's due to COVID, and obviously in-person meetings. There's a waiver for this particular law about the in-person at each site, but. The law also under normal times must provide an opportunity for members of the public to address the state body at each teleconference location. And then one member of the state body must be physically present at the location specified in the notice of the meeting. Current law defines the teleconference as electronic meeting through electronic means through either audio or both audio and video. So it can be one or the other. And then the state body has to provide meeting notice 10 days prior to a meeting. So this bill would update the definition of teleconference as a meeting conducted through electronic means through different locations through both audio and video. So it has to be both audio and video. An open teleconference meeting must be both audibly and visibly observable to the public at the location specified in the notice. For meetings conducted by teleconference, the state body must do certain things. It would have to post an agenda at the designated primary physical meeting location where the public may physically attend, but it deletes the requirement that each teleconference location must be identified in the meeting notice and be accessible to the public. It also provides that boards must conduct teleconference meetings in a manner that protects the rights of any party or member of the public appearing before the state body. It provides an opportunity for the members of the public to address the state body via teleconference at each teleconference location. And it continues to require at least one member of the state body to be physically present at the location specified in the notice of the meeting. It also subjects all meetings of a state body to the requirements of Government Code 11123.5, which I'm going to go over in a second, if they hold a teleconference meeting. And before, this was just for advisory boards and committee meetings. So this would now apply to all state bodies. The state body would need to provide at least a 24-hour advance notice before the meeting, identifying members who will participate remotely. They don't need to disclose the location, but the members participating remotely would need to be identified. The notice also has to have the primary physical meeting location. While a primary physical location of the meeting must be identified, the bill permits a quorum to consist of members in attendance via teleconference or in person physically. So remote participant members could count toward establishing a quorum. And then when a member participates remotely, the state body must provide a means by which the public may remotely observe the meeting's proceedings both through audio and visual, including members participating remotely. And if the remote access fails during a meeting, the state body must be required to adjourn. So the author's intent in doing this is that it's to modernize the Bagla-Keene Act. Allows members of the board participating remotely to count toward a quorum, and it does not require public disclosure of designated physical meeting locations from the public may participate. So that's a big step because it allows a board member who maybe can't attend for a reason to have the meeting from their house without having, public access. And that raises some potential legal concerns about ADA compliance and other things that we have been advised to be aware of. And so the author also states the reform in this bill is not replacing physical meetings, but it's authorizing the state bodies to have the meeting via teleconference in addition to a physical meeting. So, and I will say that I think that we've all observed during the COVID pandemic, when we've transitioned to first Zoom and then now WebEx, it seems to increase the ability of a lot of stakeholders to be able to participate because they don't necessarily have to physically, fly to wherever we're meeting if it happens to be far away from them and then attend. The current setup in WebEx, I did ask the department because it would definitely require some changes if we were to have the board meeting, let's say in Sacramento, all together with some members of the public, and then also having a location or having the ability so all parties can see and hear the board, and then the board can see individually all the individuals. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I'm not quite sure logistically how that would work. I'm told the legislative unit has told me that DCA is looking into the logistics and cost of doing that. So that's pending investigation. And so with that, I'll open it up for discussion.
Thank you, Roseanne. So Max, go ahead.
No, just a question. Oh, Christina, you can go ahead. I just have a.
You go.
Okay, I'm surprised not to have heard on the bill addressing the directive, for instance, for people that they need an ASL interpreter for making it fully accessible. So are people able to, through these bills, to communicate in advance, for instance, from the Board of BABS, if someone that is visually or ear impaired, being able to have access? So because so far we don't have that in place. Am I correct, Roseanne? Or?
We don't have that in place. There's several Bagla Keen boards bills this year. This one kind of seemed the most to do the most. There were some bills about interpreters. I don't know how those were going to evolve. It wasn't just ASL.
Right.
That would be probably a little more cost prohibitive in terms of the fiscal impact. So I'm not sure how those are going to evolve, but I know that those kind of situations are being looked into.
Yeah, because I just don't want to give them pressure that, by supporting a bill like this that doesn't include whatsoever even a provision of a possibility, because we have a lot of people listed in the community where I serve that are licensees that obviously are, serving a population that, use translators for ASL translators, so forth, but yet don't have access to the board in terms of, interactions as we are having right now. So I don't know if there is a possibility for us to, after the conversation on this bill, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but in case we're going to support it, I wonder if it's something we should consider to include. Because, it's not every time. When there are people that would like to have access, they will communicate to the board a certain time prior to the meeting so that we know that there is a person that needs a translation, and then they have, whatever the cost is, it has to be put in account because these are the population that we're serving. So I just wonder if we can have a conversation about that, because otherwise it's not even mentioned. So I'm a little bit concerned about that.
I'm thinking that that some of the platform, to allow live conferencing, like Facebook, actually allowed to have that the live captioning. So I think that these features, can certainly be, explore, just to how we can, use the captioning to increase the, the access, and also to avoid, the cost, for interpretation. And it looks like Sabina, you want to make a comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great.
I see you.
I know. Yes, DCA has actually started some captioning of some live webcasts. And so I know that has been in development with the webcast office and those staff who do that. So I do know that that is being rolled out slowly, and not sure if it's going to be every single board meeting and every single board. And Max, as you pointed out, we do have, with each agenda, we do put a blurb in there about if you need any kind of special assistance or any way to access a meeting, to please contact, I think it is Christina, ahead of time to arrange that. But I do know that that is on everybody's radar, including, as you're aware, making our documents compatible with screen readers as well. So those are all something we're looking at.
Thank you, Roseanne.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, no, that's great. Obviously, the problem is that's left to the discretion of, in our case, our board or any other board, right? So because we're addressing a bill, I wonder if, that becomes a little bit more a practice that we have to look, not just a choice of the single board or staff members, but it becomes part of the bill. It would be really interesting. Since this bill is addressing accessibility, to me, it's kind of weird not to include that aspect because it's incomplete. So
yeah,
that was my concern.
Thank you. And Christina, Christina Kitamura, you have a comment too?
I just wanted to echo what Sabina said. There is a disclaimer on the agenda, every agenda that we put out, stating that if any type of accommodations were needed, I would be the contact person. And of all the years I've done this, I have not received a call yet, but I do know that that blurb is there. In the event that I get that call, then that's on me to do the research and provide that.
Thank you, Christina, for reminding us that you are the contact person and you have been doing this. I think that is important for the consumer to know that, it's not that we don't have the mechanism in place to address those concerns. But I think what Max, you're saying is like, how do we really incorporate, for this modernization process, to make sure that, those population is taken care of also. So really good thoughts,
Yeah, just to finish, I'm very confident that our staff is taking all the necessary steps to inform the public and have accessibility, but it becomes cumbersome to the people that to have to go. What I'm saying is when the process is standardized throughout California on a bill like this, it makes it easier, first of all, to make sure that all the places where there is public access are actually accessible. So it's not, once again, prerogative of a single board, and also it gives us the opportunity for people to really be confident, come forward, and not feeling like they are creating a problem every time they had to ask for a special accommodation, because even the definition of special accommodation creates a space where people feel, okay, I'm so special that now they even had to come forward and support me, right? The language also is power. We know that very well. So I just was wondering, a bill like this, if we could maybe through Roseanne, add a conversation around, the opportunity that we have here to actually really truly be inclusive and not just through the title.
Absolutely. So that's a really good direction. And it seems like, according to Sabina, DCA is very, very aware of this. And this is a great opportunity because of the technology is here. And so I think it's a matter of like, how we standardize it, utilize the technology, and then be able to include more people to participate. So awesome. So I want to have a quick comment. So, so looks like this bill basically, is reflecting exactly what we're doing, and try to, basically introduce the language, so that, we're just not operating on the emergency order, by the governor. So I think this is wonderful because it has been showing that it is effective. I do notice though, that the requirement of having one board member present in the office, so that is like the old teleconference rule. And I've, way back when, since I live in, Northern California, it's always me or Betty, who lives in Sacramento area, that to always attend the meeting. And so, so I just want to bring it up, that point out to the board members that is actually one of the biggest change as well. That will require one person, to be present with the board. And so it also means that, board staff, may need to be, I mean, the meeting very likely, will need to occur, in the office, instead of, various location. So I'm good with that. I think, this modernized language, looks really good looks very good to me. And so I recommend to support it. So not in motion yet, but that's just my thought. Because we need to hear from the public. So board members, any other comments before I move to, the public? Nope. Okay. So moderator, please.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make comments on this bill, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists.
All right, seeing none. Do you see any moderator?
I do not, and I will close the panel.
Thank you. So I think I can, Roseanne, go ahead.
I could make a suggestion that since we're just at policy and we're not taking an official position, if Max would like, I could reach out to the author's office about, and I might need a little help with how you want me to word it. Is it ASL translators, or is there a better term to capture kind of that whole group that might need a translator? But I could reach out and ask them if that's something they can consider. I know that when I spoke to the author's office about this bill, they have some concerns about moving it forward because there's a little bit of resistance to kind of opening up meetings to telehealth. So it'll be interesting to see what their response is. But I could report that back at the May meeting.
Yeah, Roseanne, I have full confidence you'll find the right wording to convey what the concern is. But yeah, since we're talking about accessibility, I will refer to the whole spectrum of accessibility. Definitely translator or transcription as well. I know, like Christina was saying, now the technology allows us to have even impromptu translations, but they are not really yet accurate. Those ones that are provided by our media tools are just, it's kind of like the Google translators. I mean, you can get something right, but not necessarily. So I just would like for them to give us an idea about how, if they have explored this, because, in California, if you really want to have full accessibility, you can't just say that's too costly or we can't do it. I mean, I would like to know more about that. So that's it. Thank you, Roseanne. Thanks for taking the time to do that.
So would it be accurate to say that have they explored the option of having transcriptions or transcribers to promote ADA accessibility? Would that be an accurate way of wording?
And if a yes or no, so what are the other options for people to have access, since this is not, for whatever reason, is not able to be offered?
Okay.
Awesome.
I will do that.
And Deborah.
I don't mean to open Pandora's box here, but I think Max has brought up a really good point. And would there or should there be the possibility of language as well? So it's not just English. And there are so many opportunities with technology today to have services that will automatically change it into different languages, and that the person watching could do that.
I think, Roseanne, you're pretty clear about the direction to go. It is really, whether it's about the visual aid, of captioning or whatever, and I'm sure that, we're definitely one of the, we're not the only board who will echo that need, to take care of the, to take care of the other population, just to basically to increase the accessibility.
Yeah, and I'll bring up Deborah's point as well when I contact the author.
So the question really is like, would you like to, include that in the bill, or, because even we provide a support position, it still doesn't preclude you from, reaching out to the office.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
I will ask them if that's something that they've considered or would consider.
Absolutely, because I feel like that, it is kind of like on a tangent, of the Open Meeting Act. It's relevant, and yet, it include in the Open Meeting Act? It's kind of like, so yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah. So in that sense, I will make a motion to support this bill and direct staff to continue the conversation with with the author's office to express our concern for the increasing the accessibility. Or yeah. Okay, and Deborah second. So moderator, would you please open for the Q&A panel to see if there's any other comments from the public?
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make any final comments on this bill, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. And seeing none,
good.
Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You are welcome.
All right, so I think we are ready to vote. Christina, please.
Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yay, thank you, Christina, and thank you, Roseanne, for the for the explanation. So let's move to item number 12, and that is the Assembly Bill 988, and it is regarding mental health mobile crisis support team. 988 crisis hotline, something new.
Yes. So this bill would establish a statewide 988 mental health crisis hotline system. So 988 would be a number you would call, much like 911 for an emergency, but 988 would be for a mental health crisis supportive services. So existing law established, it was signed in 2020, it's federal law, establishes the National Suicide Hotline Designation Act of 2020. And it designated 988 as the universal telephone number for the purpose of national suicide prevention and mental health crisis hotline systems. So this bill basically is seeking to implement that federal law. And it would require the Office of Emergency Services, or OES, to implement and oversee the newly established 988 mental health crisis hotline system for the state of California. So OES would be required to take on certain tasks in implementing the system. It would need to appoint a crisis hotline system director, designate at least one 998 crisis hotline center prior to July of 2022. It would need to ensure coordination between the 988 crisis hotline system and the 911 system, and also mental health crisis services. It would need to establish training guidelines for employees across 988, 911, emergency medical services, and then law enforcement and also firefighters. It would need to utilize technology that is interoperable across crisis and emergency response systems, such as rapidly deploying mobile crisis support teams through GPS and tracking and providing real-time bed availability to crisis responders and individuals in crisis. It would be required to provide follow-up services to individuals consistent with guidance provided by the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and employ or contract with a sufficient number of qualified bilingual persons or interpreters. Counties would need to make county-operated mental health crisis services available to 988 callers and coordinate with the deployment and access. And the counties would bill appropriate healthcare service plans or insurers for treatment for privately insured individuals. It includes requirements to ensure that the 988 system meets the unique needs of California's diverse communities. So it has several provisions requiring equitable access regardless of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and geographic locations. It would need to meet the needs of specified populations. And so it has those assurances in it. And then in terms of funding, it would create a 988 monthly surcharge on phone service lines, much like the existing 911 system already has that. And it defines mental health crisis services, including crisis intervention and mobile crisis support teams that include licensed mental health professionals and peer support specialists, and may include medical and health professionals. And then it defines a mental health professional as R4 license types, and also a license, actually are three license types: clinical social worker, licensed professional clinical counselor, and marriage and family therapist. And then also, so R3, not educational psychologists, and then also a psychologist or a licensed physician or board certified physician as a psychiatrist. So the author is seeking, of course, to implement the 988 system and create a way to have a mental health crisis response system that's separate but in collaboration with 911. The one comment that I would, as staff, have with this bill is that it states that mobile crisis support teams can include licensed mental health professionals and peer support specialists. It leaves out of that definition associates and trainees. And if certified peer support specialists are going to be included, I think it's worth the discussion on whether associates and trainees should be included as well. So with that, we can discuss further.
Thank you, Roseanne. So this is looks like it is an overhaul of the current crisis, mental health crisis services, and really, expand and then trying to, restructure, how it's being implemented, to include, that's, or the mandate, of having, a team, to respond. And so, really, really wonderful idea, and the concept. So just one question from Roseanne, since you talk about that, this is from the federal law. So, since there's an existing federal law, back in 2020 already, have that's a National Suicide Hotline Designation Act. So, does it mean that, it is one of the law come from the federal government that, that's, it's a mandate, for the state to, implement, the act at the local level?
I don't know that it's a mandate. That would require a little more research. It's something that the state is trying to implement.
Right. I'm just thinking about that, because it is, there's the act already, from the federal level. And so, so whether, I think, whether it's a recommendation for the state to implement or whether it's a mandate, I think it makes a big difference, also, for us.
I can find that out.
Yeah. And so, but I think the idea, is really wonderful. The state has really been trying to, find a modality of the crisis service, that is sustainable. So I can see that, the concept is, definitely, it's wonderful. The concept is wonderful. But I also suspect that, there are going to be a lot of the changes, and discussion, from the stakeholders, about like, how the implementation is going to look like. So that's my 2 cents, and I'm going to see if my coworkers, my peer, yep, Deborah, thank you for saving me, for saying, you all.
And just a question, and you sit on the subcommittee, I believe, Christina, on telehealth. And we've talked about in depth about how telehealth is kind of embracing a lot of different things. And don't you think that this might be well served? Go ahead and bump on over to them to see where that might fall within with the scope that you guys are working on right now.
I think that's, yeah, Roseanne, what's your thought?
It definitely is something that we can incorporate in our discussions. I think that the next telehealth committee is not until the end of June. And so I don't know that I would want to defer it, because then we wouldn't, I mean, if you want to take a position on it, we could just watch it, but the time to take a position on it would be when it's moving through its committees. So early May, when the board needs to be better. And then the telehealth committee can't take a position, it can only recommend. So we wouldn't want to defer it like to I think the board meets in after May. I think they meet in late August or September. So that would be a little late in terms of taking a position.
Right. So, Wendy.
I think, Christina, I think your question is a good one about, whether this is mandatory or voluntary. So I think that's an important item to include when we get to the board. But at the full board level and in this committee, we've talked a lot about the mental health crisis, particularly, exacerbated by the pandemic. And so I think it's important that we make a statement through supporting moving forward with something like this and making it easier for people to access services, particularly when they're in crisis. So I feel like this is something important. We need to move forward to the board with a support recommendation, and in between now and then get a little more information about the actual implementation.
Right. Yep. I concur with you, Wendy. Any other board members have comments?
I really support what Wendy just shared. I think it's the best way to go, and so that we can also elaborate even more about the applicability and how it's going to look like, in the process. So, but I definitely would like to support it, but then we, opening the conversation to the board as well.
Absolutely.
I'm really curious to know what our partners in the audience, from the licensees partners are, if they have any opinions about it, or if it's something that they feel strongly in one way or another.
Yes.
I would like to hear that.
Yep, that's definitely, a time for stakeholders to, give us some your opinion and your, expertise, and so that to help the board members to make decision or recommendation. So, moderator, would you please open the Q&A panel?
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Jennifer Alley. Jennifer, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Good morning. This is Jennifer Alley with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. And CAMPT is supporting this bill that implements the National 988 system in California. We think it's important that all people experiencing a mental health crisis are able to receive, some treatment. It's our understanding that these crisis hotline centers that are established will be working with the National Suicide Hotline, to provide some of the support, and so we do think I hope that the board can support it as well. I don't have an opinion on associates. It isn't something that we've discussed, so it's not because we don't think that associates should be included. I think that, the staff pointing out what Roseanne had to say about associates being excluded when peer specialists would be included is something that we need to talk about. And so I think that was something important to point out. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Jennifer. Always love to hear from you, and your opinion also. I think we have Rebecca, right?
We do. Rebecca Gonzalez. Rebecca, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Great. Good morning again. Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California Chapter. We also wholeheartedly support this bill. We think it's a very important program for California. Too many times, as we have seen, law enforcement are trying to take mental health calls instead of having a mental health therapist who is someone who really can truly de-escalate a situation and hopefully get that person help. To echo what Jennifer said, we actually had also not talked about the ASW or, associate recommendation that Roseanne made. I think it makes complete sense, though, that we should be included in the bill, although it hadn't been part of our discussions previously. But definitely encourage the board to support this bill.
Thank you, Rebecca. I have a feeling that, because, like I say, I think it is an overhaul. And, I'm pretty sure that, at the county level, they will be having a lot of the discussion about the implementation, because I can compare, me working in county, knowing how this is, right now, how the crisis services are being implemented. I think, it is going to impact, a lot of the, impact the county big and small, in their own different ways. But at the same time, I think I think for now, it is so important, to support it, and then I think also, continue to watch and, to just see how the movement goes. So, when the bill introduced, I think this is, exactly open the time, for the stakeholder to come back together, to really figure it out, how we can really protect and address, the consumer's needs, especially the trend of suicide. It is very dear and close to my heart. So, being said, being very wordy me, I think that, I would like to just, maybe have a motion. Any of my coworkers are passionate about making a motion. Oh, I see 2 hands. So, Max and Wendy, you guys, Rochambeau.
Wendy, go ahead. Don't worry. I can second. I think she.
Oh, okay. I was gonna. I'm happy to be either first or second. It doesn't matter to me.
You guys are so great. So Wendy, go ahead and support.
Okay, I will make the motion to support AB 988.
Yes.
Likewise, and actually, I would like to say something in lieu of what in supporting of what Jennifer was saying. In San Diego County, where I live, actually, the county supervisor has approved not long ago a similar path for a mobile crisis intervention for mental health. And my personal opinion is also it's longer overdue, actually, besides the pandemic. I mean, this is something that we really needed, 10 years ago to begin with. But I'm also, whatever the conversation goes about those that are interns and not yet licensed, I still prefer to have people that have an interest on the profession to be on the ground, that law enforcement that has no experience whatsoever in de-escalating and approaching, people in a crisis. So I hope it works in that direction as well, so that we can see more presence of folks on the streets, that they are really there to support the people they are going through a crisis. So yeah, feel very strong about this. So thank you.
So I wonder, and I, on the other hand, I totally support including, the associates and the trainee, because I can tell you right here, that's, they are under supervision. There is no reason why they should be excluded. So, right. So Roseanne, now in that sense, since we do have a support position, would you like to include, some language in the motion about, continue to direct staff to continue to have a conversation with the author's office to include the associates and trainees? Yeah.
Yeah, I think of the motion we support and have staff contact the author with technical support to see if they would to explore if they would be willing to consider adding associates and trainees.
Yes. Is that a motion?
Yes. So my motion is what Roseanne said. That's always a safe one.
Exactly.
Whatever Roseanne said.
And I'll second Roseanne as well.
I love it. All right. So moderator, I would like to have you open the panel and see if there's any other comments.
This is the moderator. We have again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make any final comments on this bill, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists.
Doesn't look like there are any.
Seeing none.
Seeing none. Awesome.
All right, I will close it.
Awesome, but this is good for us to move forward. So
Yes.
Christina, please help us vote.
Okay. Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. So looking at the time, I'm thinking that let's move for one more bill, and then we can close for a quick lunch. So will that plan work for everyone? It's about 11:48 right now. Okay, so let's do that. All right. So now we will move to agenda number 8, and it's the Assembly Bill 1026 by Arthur Smith, and it's regarding business license veterans.
Yes. This bill would require licensing boards under DCA to grant a 50% fee reduction of the initial license fee to an applicant who has served as an active duty member of U.S. Armed Forces or National Guard and was honorably discharged. So under current law, the board is already required to expedite this process for applicants who are actively honorably discharged or who are spouses of active military members and already licensed in the same profession in another state. So this would just extend for the active duty honorably discharged members, would extend to them a 50% fee reduction of their initial license fee if they can provide satisfactory evidence, and that is defined as a copy of their valid driver's license or ID card with the word veteran printed on it. The author is seeking to ease the financial burden for veterans who are transitioning to the civilian workforce. So in terms of the fee reduction, the bill requires a 50% fee reduction of the initial license fee. It's just the initial license fee. Board applicants also typically have to pay a registration application fee if they're going to be a registrant, renewal fees for their registration, application for licensure fee, which gets them into the clinical exam cycle. But those fees don't appear to be waived under this bill. So we're just talking about the initial license fee. So estimating the fiscal impact for that, the initial license fee for all of our license types is $200. I've provided a breakdown of the number of honorably discharged veterans who met the requirements for expedited license. So it averages about 337 a year. Assuming all of those went on to meet all the requirements to obtain an initial license, it would be a $100 fee reduction. So $100 times 337 veterans, a fiscal impact to the board of about $33,700 per year. In terms of previous or related legislation, last year the board took an opposed unless amended position on AB 3045, which was issuing a license to certain active duty or military spouses because of the concern it would undermine our recent work on the license by credential pathway. This bill kind of goes in a different direction to that, so it's a little bit different. And there's a few different related bills. We've discussed AB 107 already. We will be discussing AB 1386, which does something similar in terms of fee waiver for military spouses. And there's also SB 607, which was gotten amended this week. You'll be seeing it at board if it continues to move. And that waives all application fees for military spouses who qualify. So there's a few other bills going on similar pathways to this one as part of a larger effort.
All right. So I think every year we see a lot of these bills that's supporting the veterans, and they're very well intended, trying to, promote the, employability. Now that's a new word. Sorry, promote employment. And and just really reducing the barriers when they're transferred from state to state. And so this particular one now is targeting the honorary discharged veterans. and basically have a fee reduction, to apply for the license. And so, I would love to actually, turn to Steve, because Roseanne does have that, little estimate about, the impact about close to $34,000 per year, for the license fee. So how does that, what is your estimate, if this bill pass, and how does it impact, the board's fiscal and the budgets? Steve, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was having trouble with my audio. I don't know. I don't sound like I'm echoing, do I?
No, you're fine.
Okay, good. Because
It's
I'm on the
okay.
phone too.
Yes.
Yeah, I would have to see with the fee increase, though. I think the $30,000, and it doesn't necessarily make me nervous about, about our actual budgetary restrictions. So, I mean, especially with the the fee increase, I think we would probably be able to absorb that cost with the amount. I guess my concern would be that we would then have to kind of take a consideration if we did get, if we start doing additional, I mean, this is for the, if we started doing with the spouse of military and such like that, and starting to add on additional waivers of fees or reduction of fees, then we'd have to start really considering, I think. But I think 30,000 is probably something that we could work with. I don't think it would be that hit, and it is definitely a nice gesture.
So what you're saying is that, is your worry about opening the Pandora box, so giving, and setting the precedence of having the fee reduction in, and how that is going to impact down the road.
Yeah. And then we also have, what we might consider too is definitely our military veterans do deserve some, commendation through us, but we also have licensees or registrants that might be financially strapped and that are trying to get through the process that also are, I've heard, with COVID especially, looking at possibly, not waivers per se, but, fee reductions to assist people that are in financial straits. And so I don't know, it's that equity thing again. It's, do we want to approach this as 30,000 is something we could probably handle, but then again, there's registrants that might be trying to get through the process where they can't necessarily afford. So we might have to consider. I would highly recommend considering that equity also. So that's my overall concern with that. So.
Absolutely. And Wendy.
Yeah, I was going to comment on what Steve was talking about, and I think certainly, I do feel very strongly that we owe our veterans every opportunity to be successful and want to advance that. But that was something that came up during the pandemic. We had a lot of licensees commenting and coming to our board meeting, asking for accommodation when they've lost their jobs and things like that. And we weren't able to do that. And so I guess the question for me is that equity piece of, how do we, how can we provide a system that allows for these types of waivers or decreases or what have you, that doesn't impact the board's ongoing financial stability. So I think at one point, I haven't been on the board that long, but I think there was some discussion of if the legislature would like to move in this direction, perhaps that there's some financial support that comes from the general fund or something else to support that, so that, while this one may be only $30,000, if there are future bills for larger populations, then it starts to become a financial stability issue. So maybe is there a request, or is there a way, Roseanne, maybe to request some sort of funding that would go along with this bill to backfill those reductions?
Roseanne, go ahead.
I could mention the concern to the budget office. They're the ones that provide the fiscal and it doesn't really, that kind of concern doesn't really go through the author, it goes through the Department of Finance. So we would report our fiscal of, 33,700, but say, we have equity concerns and we have concerns that, this is, because there's another bill you'll hear of in May where it's waiving more than just those fees. So it becomes, well, where, how do we fund all of this? And they're kind of tackled individually, but it is an ongoing concern. So I can raise that to our budget office.
And then I think then it kind of gets down to a point of how we are going to look at, when these bills come up, how are we going to look at that? Unfortunately, you get in this position where you do have to, you might have to say oppose, even though we really truly agree with it. And at the same time working, maybe that's something we want to approach in the next legislative cycle as looking on some kind of like a fee forgiveness or something to make it more equitable so you could actually, move forward. So, but unfortunately, unlike these positions, I think you might have to take a position that, we have a reason behind it, but I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. I think, I really don't want to offend, the veteran or, underestimate their contribution. And since this is really about, the initial license fee. And so, so in our profession, those who are able to get the license, it's, what's the right word? I wonder, just how much, whether they are at the top category, of the military service people that, should have that fee reduction. Because reality is, I think, those associates, actually, their fees can be pretty, a lot more. So I'm looking at the need level, so whether, the idea is wonderful, I support the veterans. And yet, to me, it's about the priority, are those, honorary discharge licensees are, the one that who has the most need.
And also just preventing financial barriers, I think, is the.
Yes. So Max, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to echo that this is not about putting one population against the other whatsoever, right? It's interesting though, because then the state at the end of the year wants us to budget, rightfully so, and then so it's kind of like asking us to pay for something that we don't get back, and then the state will take away even more because of the lack of budgeting. So it's really problematic. I think this is very useful, but perhaps there should be more a state-related intervention, like it's been under COVID for population that have been affected the most by the pandemic. I can think about thousands of soon-to-be licensee in community of not central, centers where people had to drive, had to go places to get their license and study, and there are community disadvantaged where there is a greater disparities over there. In my personal opinion, they should have free access to that education, but that's not what is being discussed. So I share the sentiment. I think it will be the right thing to do, but at the same time, it just the budgeting that we are forced to work with, doesn't allow us to do that. So I think maybe it should be a concern sent back to the state, and it's like, how are we going to support these populations that obviously are mostly affected by the disparities, like our veterans and our people of color in regions where they are not well served and where they actually, their license will make a huge difference, right? So yeah, I just wanted to share the concerns and add to it as well.
Thank you. This is a wonderful discussion. So, if board members, right now, ready to hear the public comments, so let's open up the Q&A. Please, moderator.
You got it. This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Rebecca Gonzalez. Rebecca, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Good morning, or actually good afternoon now.
Yes.
Rebecca Gonzalez, NASW California. We also do not have a position on this bill, but I do appreciate the discussion. We, of course, heard from many of our members when the fees were increased that it was a financial hardship. And also in the context of the discussions we've been having about racial and ethnic disparities, there's also been a lot of discussion about helping IPOC applicants. So, you know, this kind of bill, I do agree with Steve, it could open up the conversation further. And so you have to think about how you balance all of those different requests, which are also worthy. And I would also advocate for those populations. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think, it's a very consistent message. The idea is good. It's about the implementation again. So, and how it affects, open up the equity issue. So, any other comments?
No other comments at this time. I'll close the panel.
Thank you so much. So, I think Steve, provided a very good advice, or an advice, how we should proceed. So, board members, what are you all thinking? Should we just straight up oppose? Or should we say oppose if amended and direct staff to talk about to the author's office? So Roseanne, what do you think?
Keep in mind too, if you don't necessarily have the 4 options of the support if amended, oppose, less amended, or you can also have no position too. That's definitely an option if you don't want to weigh in. So that's your choice.
Right. And so it's really about like the message, that we sent to the author's office, where we stand. So I think, the equity issue is a really, really big deal, and how it, anytime when it deals with, budget, and the possible impact. So my suggestion is probably, my preference is, that maybe just oppose. And it's my suggestion, does it sound right for board members? I see Max nod and Wendy, what do you think?
I don't think I'm totally comfortable with an opposed position on it, because I don't, like, for me personally, I think there is some interest on providing, on having some vehicle at some point in the future for providing some, support or, assistance for folks. So I don't know that I really want to oppose it. I feel like there's an opportunity here to make the request for, if the waivers are going to be granted, that there's some sort of funding support established for that. Because I don't think anybody on the board would oppose it if it came with funding to implement. I think that's kind of where I feel. But if the rest of the committee is comfortable with an opposed position, that's fine. I can, sort of make my comments at the full board as well.
No, absolutely, Wendy. I think, the consideration of all aspects, and the message that we sent to, the author's office also is actually important. That's why we're talking about this. So Deborah, you're kind of like, yes, please.
I think at this point, I'm leaning towards taking no action. And the reason for that is that Roseanne brought up the point that there's going to be more of this coming down our way in May. And I'm wondering if maybe we just wait to see what that more is and see if it in some way is connected to what we're looking at today. So, I mean, that's what I'm just looking at is a wait and see kind of attitude. And I don't know what Roseanne's talking about in May, but I'm sure we'll be apprised of that.
I can tell you that in May, we'll be looking at SB 607, which is being authored by the chair of the Senate Business and Professions Committee, that takes it a step further and would waive all application fees for military spouses who qualified for expedited licensure. So that's kind of coming from all parties in all different directions. There's a number of these bills. So there is the issue of needing to be consistent with the positions. You know, it looks like we're looking at least 3 of these type of bills that do different things. One coming from the chair of Senate BMP, which is significant. So I would suggest some mindfulness of that as well.
Yes, yes. So I think, you know, in that sense, so we should really considering the the political atmosphere, so in that sense, if we don't, if we watch it, then we're not going to be able to, I mean, it has to be consistent. And so, I don't oppose to watch it, and so that we avoid taking a position. And so when more to come, we can consider it as a packet. So that would be probably a good compromise for now. But at the same time, we do address the concern. So, I'm sure that Roseanne, once, since the board did discuss it, since even though we don't take a position, it doesn't stop, Roseanne, for you to reach out and basically, to take our discussion, to the author's office.
What I can do, yes, I can reach out to the author's office and suggest that that funding support would be needed for these types of bills, most likely, and that I can also let budgets know for their conversations with finance that we're seeing a package of these bills, and while standalone on their own, might be acceptable. When you put it all together, it becomes concerning.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the direction, like Steve said, maybe establish like a packet of funding, like the loan repayment program that we tax on, the license fees or whatever the avenue, I think that's actually become more productive, and so whether, so I think it's about the format, how how we actually support, the employability, of the transfer, of the, these veterans, when they discharge, when they got deployed in different state and all of the above. So, so it sounds like it's no position. No, we're not taking any recommendation for now. Sounds good? Yes, Max?
A little bit concerned about that. I could go with that, but it's a little bit problematic because then while I fully trust Roseanne and the way she's going to obviously deliver the message, but the position on not taking position, that is the final that goes in the record for us and not the comment that Roseanne will add to it. So I wonder, I'm a little bit concerned because let's remember also that I know I'm going to get a lot of fire for this, but a lot of our military veterans are obviously public servant and they're also part of government, right? So we can't create disparities for people that work for the government versus for people that don't. So I'm thinking, once again, like it was mentioned before, all our BIPOC community, they don't have access to special loans to buy a house. They don't have access to housing incentives when they move from one place to another. Again, I don't mean to put people against others and groups against others, but it's definitely, we have so many disadvantaged populations out there that they really can't even make ends meet while they're going to school. And here we're isolating this aspect of military and veteran service members that deserve to be regarded for this. But at the same time, it's not the population we're dealing with is most disparaged when it comes to that. So I don't know how an extension of watching the bill might do much, because then it will keep rolling and come back to us. I'm more inclined to say opposition unless the bill includes those amendments. So I think that's stronger message, because otherwise I don't know, if it stands alone like this on black and white, I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know, Roseanne, if you feel that I'm wrong in regards to how much your message will also be reflected, because it will be communicated, but it's not going to be read anywhere, right?
Right. No, I mean, well, this isn't, keep in mind, this isn't official position yet. The official position will come from the May 7th. So we might have more information then. But I
Okay.
think that an oppose unless amended would definitely get their attention about the funding source more. You know, if we're saying, if I'm saying, hey, we have concern about, you know, all of these bills as a whole, and that's not, you know, needing funding, we need funding to be attached to this, and then it also raises an equity issue.
Right.
That oppose unless amended is a stronger way to get them to listen rather than just saying, hey, can you do this?
Right. Also because it reflects the conversation we're having today, pretty
Right.
much. But okay.
Wendy.
Roseanne, just a question. I know in other groups that I've been involved with, work with author has been a position that we've taken in cases where, you know, there are some concerns, but we're maybe not prepared to weigh in on the final outcome. So, you know, if we're going to also have a policy committee in May, you know, could we take an official work with author position that reflects the comments made today so that those are in the minutes and it's clear what the committee intended and what the recommendation is, so we can express all those concerns. And then if we come back at May and we didn't get some immediate reception to that conversation, then maybe we come back with a stronger position at a different time.
Yeah, so the work with author, it's not really a position. It would just be directing me to work with the author's office. And I would raise the concerns that were addressed today, and we kind of basically see how they responded to that. And then that would influence, you know, when the board meets in May to take its official position, then we could, you know, let any feedback or lack thereof, or you know, arguments that they made, that would be reflected at the board meeting. We know that.
Yeah, so again, you know, we're recommending to the full board, you know, that, you know, based on this discussion, this is what we think. And then in the meantime, you know, Roseanne also have a recommended position, you know, and the, you know, the discussion that we talked about to continue to have that conversation with the author's office. So, you know, so we discussed all different options. Wonderful. From no position to straight oppose or oppose unless amended. So it looks like the more palatable for now, you know, what I heard, it's really about oppose unless amended. So I think it's probably a better, you know, balance. You know, now, once again, you know, there are going to be more of these bills going to come. But, you know, so we just have to be mindful. But I think, you know, oppose unless amended, you know, will give us a little bit more teeth, you know, on, you know, put us on the table to really talk about the equity issue and really address what Max, you know, said. And also rest assured, Wendy, you know, there are things that we recommend in P&A, and when it comes to the full board, we change our direction. So it's actually fine. You know, we do not have to worry too much about that. And this is why this is, you know, the democracy works. And so, you know, so now in that sense, or if, you know, if I make a motion to have, if I make a motion to have the oppose unless amended and direct staff to address, you know, the equity issue and all the other stuff that we talked about, you know, will do
Yeah, I'll second that. I will second that.
Max. Thank you. Yes. So now, any other questions from the board member about the, or even EO, you know, about the position?
I mean, I think the position, I think it's kind of, because you have to like deal like with this bill alone and what this is trying to say. The equity issue is definitely something that's part of that. I think that can get out in conversations with, but I think you might want to say oppose if amended to include, you know, the actual financial aspect of that. You know, I think that's probably, because we're not necessarily, I mean, the equity issue is something that it sounds like you are interested in addressing. I think on a broader scale, we'll have to address that in bigger ways than, you know, just because what will come out, I mean, with our discussions through the authors is we can tell them that equity, but then it's really behind the scenes of this is what our concerns were.
Yes.
I think there's a bigger way to deal with that. So I mean, maybe the opposed with the, it's amended with financial stuff in there. I don't know if that, please.
I think Roseanne get it. I think Roseanne has been taking notes and, so I think you got to trust yourself that she does good work. So.
You know I do.
And we all know that Roseanne does good work. So, I think it really is about like, how specific you want the motion is, And so, so Roseanne, maybe, I'll come to you, maybe you can repeat, kind of like help us clarify what the motion is.
Yes, so the motion would be a oppose unless amended position with the amendment that we would want to be to reach, basically that we would want to request funding support along with it, and then we would also want to raise concerns about continuing the process of fee waivers eventually if there's no funding. That's a concern, and also that it raises significant equity issues for other underserved populations that are struggling financially, and how to address other worthy financial concerns from those groups as well in an equitable manner.
Absolutely. That's my motion. And Deborah. Deborah, can you unmute yourself?
Okay. All right. I think that brings up a really good point that I've been kind of playing with, and that is this bill, is it so detailed that it says veterans that need financial help? Or is this just veterans, whether they need help or not, which would then exacerbate the inequity of, as Max was talking about, of those who need help? So is it a veterans because you're a veteran, regardless of economic status? Or is it because you need help as a veteran?
It's written as all veterans.
So it does not designate need.
No.
Okay, I think that then plays into what Max is saying. So this is not about equality or equitability on the availability to make these payments. This is almost seen, and I'm right there with you, Max, because now I'm going to get it too, as almost a reward for being a veteran.
With that silence, I think it is a true statement. Yes.
Okay.
So
I think this conversation we've had has been great because we've been all the way around the table. So I think what it's solidified for me is this is not about financial need, since it's not delineated in the bill, that veterans who are in financial need will get to move to the front of the line because of their service, which I think all of us here would agree to get rid of those blocks, the blocking of being able to participate. But I'm sympathetic to, if we're going to talk about inequities, then we have to have a grander conversation about everybody who's playing and not just veterans. So that's why I wanted to ask you, Roseanne, if this was detailed in such a way that, is it just a blanket veterans or is it veterans in need? And you're telling me it's just all veterans. So a veteran who doesn't need financial help would get financial help.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so, so I think we really, and Wendy, go ahead.
Roseanne, are you going to start these conversations before the board meeting, or will you be waiting
So
for
usually
the board meeting?
the ones that we have feedback where you've directed for technical support, I will contact them and let them know, hey, this is how our discussion went. We're going to be taking official positions on May 7th. can you respond to these concerns? And I'll probably do that via email so that we have something in writing.
Okay.
So again, this is not just applied to our board. This is, across board. And so we're not the only professional, board, that's, that would, issue a license. So I'm sure this equity issue and the need issue, and the qualification or the qualifying issue, like Deborah, talked about, I think it will be discussed, and these are very legitimate, question. And especially coming to, from the board's point of view, it's like once we, make one eligibility, for veterans, then what about the other people? So these are, anytime it has to, come to, about money, it's a lot bigger picture to discuss. But at the same time, I think at this point, I think Roseanne is very clear, knowing, the discussion, that our concerns and, our thoughts, and I trust that Roseanne will talk to the author's office and then go from there. So we have a motion, we have a second, and I think the motion is clear. And before we vote, moderator, I would love to have your help to open a Q&A.
This is the moderator. We have again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make any final comments on this bill, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. Our first comment comes from Jennifer Alley. Jennifer, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jennifer Alley with CAMP again. CAMP doesn't have a formal position on this bill, but I do appreciate your thoughtful discussion. And I like the points that were brought up about the equity issue. So just thank you for your thoughtful discussion.
Thank you. I think the equity issue is a really big deal, in all around the country. And so, we have many people to take care of. The veterans, we love to support, and yet we also need to consider everybody. So this is a very, very valid discussion. So thank you, Jennifer, for validating us. Okay, any more questions?
Nope, that's it for now. I will close the panel.
Thank you so much, moderator. So Christina, I think we're ready to vote.
Did Max second that?
Yes.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Christina move and Max second.
Okay, Deborah Brown,
Yes.
Max Disposi,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Christina Wong.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much. This is a wonderful discussion, and I think everybody's ready to have some, food in the stomach and drinks and, to rejuvenate ourselves. So let's come back at 1 o'clock, and we will come back and discuss items number 14. Actually, I mixed up my numbers. So thank you so much. And for now, we will, take a break, and we'll be back at 1 o'clock. Thank you.